In Exodus 28 through 11, and as part of the Ten Commandments, we see that we are commanded to rest. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. You are to labor 6 days and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You must not do any work, you, your son or daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock, or the foreigner who lives within your gates. For the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything in them in 6 days. Then he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and declared it holy. Not only do we see a God who rests, but we also see a God who values human rest enough to place it as a command within the Ten Commandments. Our rest is a priority for God, and God directly connects our resting on the Sabbath to our ability to properly worship Him. Jesus has several things to say about the idea of the Sabbath while he is ministering on earth. For example, Mark 2:27, then he told them the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. What do we know about rest? Rest is good. God rested. God resting declared a day of rest as holy. Our rest is important to God. When we rest, we should use it to connect with God. Resting is for our benefit. Rest can be worship. Rest flows from trust and develops trust. Nehemiah 10:31 is a very interesting passage about the Sabbath. When the surrounding peoples bring merchandise or any kind of grain to sell on the Sabbath, we will not buy from them on the Sabbath or a holy day. We will also leave the land uncultivated in the 7th year and will cancel every debt. If you are an agrarian society, a farming culture like the Jewish people at this time, work does not mind the days of the week. There is just as much that you need to do on a Sabbath day as any other day of the week. Crops still grow on the Sabbath. Sheep still get lost on the Sabbath. When you are a businessman, it will have a negative impact on your income when your competition is willing to work an extra day that you are not. We see in Nehemiah that there are foreigners outside of Jerusalem's gate waiting and wanting to do business. It must have been difficult for the Israelites to turn them away. From a sheer time management perspective, it seems that 7 days of work must be better than 6 days of work and 1 day of rest. Taking a day to rest is a matter of trust. Do you trust God to provide for your needs, or do you think that it is completely dependent and entirely based on your own efforts? If your success, your health, your well-being in this universe is completely dependent upon you and your efforts, then you must work. Work until you can't work no more. But if there is a God over the universe who has your best interest in His plan, maybe not your everyday comfort, but your eternal peace, then you can take a day off to rest and put your work in proper context. Do you trust God to have your best interests in mind? Now, we do have an issue with trusting God, and we have our reasons. The main reasons we don't trust God is actually our own sin. Sometimes we get that image thing backwards. Sometimes we create an image of God based on our experiences as humans. An experience of our own humanity. We are not trustworthy, so how can we imagine a God being trustworthy? The question is, do we not trust God because He is untrustworthy, or because we are untrusting? If we are completely honest with ourselves, we would have to admit that it is the latter. We don't trust God because we don't trust anyone. And this lack of trust creates an image of a very unsafe world for us. We must work and do so constantly, because if we stop for a moment, then we may lose. And when we lose, we die. Sin separates us from God so that it becomes unnatural for us to trust Him. And since we don't trust Him, it is hard for us to rest. And just as work can be a form of worship, this allows us to display God's image as we look like Him as we work. We can ultimately glorify God through our work. Rest can be a form of worship that allows us to develop our trust of God and add to our worship when God works in our favor without our input being necessary.